All right, good morning, everyone. I promised you I would be back again today, and I am. So, I also said that my name is John Attenire, for those of you who either were not here yesterday, asleep, or just did not listen to me. I did tell you if you had to choose between the two conferences, this would be the two presentations. You could choose yesterday's or today's to sleep through. I recommended yesterday's, but that is only because we are in the settlement season now, and therefore this presentation is about settlements, so thought it'd be more wise for you to be awake for this, specifically with all the changes and emails I've been sending you throughout the month. So a couple of housekeeping issues I wanted to bring to your attention. Yesterday I talked a little bit about the reconciliation of the LOIT balances to be put into property tax relief funds. We will be sending out a memo about that sometime in early June to kind of specify a little bit more of what we mean. So if you did not take that note yesterday, we will advise you again in a couple of days. Also, yesterday we did not have anyone manning the AOS booth. Today we do. So if you do not have questions for me after here, or if you do not ever get a chance to run into me between presentations, we do have someone sitting out there today, and we will be there afterwards as well. So with that said, let's get right to the chase of the great topic of settlements. We're going to be primarily focusing on the changes in the forms because, as you know, many revisions have occurred in those. Again, so this is a little bit of the process we're going to be looking at today. I know I briefly touched on the process of the review yesterday, but I'll go over it a little bit more in depth today. Then I'll go through each of the forms, all the changes, and actually how to go about filling out the forms. That way, just because with so many changes going on, I want to make it as easy as possible for you to get those changes taken care of and fixed. So yeah, let's get started. So how the settlement process is going to work, we have hopefully published the final versions of all the settlement forms on the FTP site in the From Settlements folder. Hopefully some of you have got a chance to start on those or at least look at them. I know sometimes this is the initiation point because we're going to be going through it, but if not, we know, I believe at least 2 counties have submitted thus far, so it is possible to start even with the miscommunication on my behalf with you guys. So again, we are going to be partnering with Crow, who did an excellent job during the abstract process. And it'll be kind of in a very similar role where you will submit it to the FTP site, let us know that it's submitted through the settlements email. They'll be going through their review process, just like the abstract, sending it over to us to look at and approve, send it back to you, and hopefully that goes very smoothly this year, so it should. The reason we are partnering with Crow, that internal control, it really is strengthening the accuracy of the reports. These are your county reports that you have to publish and give to your taxpayers. We want those as accurate as possible, as I'm sure you do as well. So this is just another layer that betters that process. So one thing you can expect that it will be a little different from last year. It may take a little bit more time to get that approval, but hopefully, if you read the memo, or if you haven't looked at it yet, in the memo I did suggest a couple of ways that you could speed up that process to get the approval a little quicker. So how you could do that, there is a checklist provided in your FTP folder that goes through essentially a summary of what we are auditing and checking. So if you're able to complete that, it should be just about a no-brainer to get approval. On the settlement sheets, most of the checking process is kind of making sure the numbers are consistent throughout each of the forms. So that is mostly what the checklist consists of, a couple of columns where it will match on other forms. So if you're able to reconcile those beforehand, you should be good to go. Another way that you can help us speed up your approval time is if you notice any obscurities in the settlement process, such as numbers not reconciling, abnormal gross. I know we just started somewhat looking at Section C of the 105 form and found an error last year that in that form, which actually brought it to our attention other things we should probably be checking. If you notice anything abnormal about that, we advise you to look into it beforehand and submit it when you actually submit the forms. That way, you save us a step of asking you a question and going through the back and forth trying to figure out what the issue is. And then for cases that you don't maybe pick up because maybe they're not as obvious that we do see in our review, be prepared to answer those follow-up questions. It'll be similar to how the abstract questions were due, a little bit different types of questions, but if you're prepared for that, then we'll be able to speed up that approval process. So these are the 3 steps I really recommend you guys do when doing the settlement forms. I know there's been a lot of changes to the forms, and as you might have noticed, we did actually test the forms before sending them out, but as you notice, the test process and actually doing the forms and being so new, that is an important factor. The forms completely different from any previous year, hopefully a lot simpler for you. We're not breaking out as many things, and if you haven't got a chance to look at the 49 TC, I'm sure all of you will love what happened to that. But that's my opinion. So the first form I want to kind of hit on is Form 105. The major difference on the Form 105 is what happened in Section A. So first off, homestead credits no longer exist, as well as property tax replacement. You could argue we either deleted the 2 or condensed them into 1 to create the property tax relief amount, and that is the only form of relief on the form now. So instead of the 4 columns you used to have to report numbers in, you only got, or if you had the option of 4, you only have 3 now. So that's a plus. Saves you a little bit more time. We also ended up removing what was row 5, which was a state share of 2008 and prior delinquent tax penalties collected. We went through and reviewed the past 2 years, and there was nothing reported in any county in that column, or row, I apologize, in that row. So we figured it was safe to assume no one's using that anymore. So just to make the form a little smaller, try to simplify your lives a little bit better, we just removed it. And the only other change, which is more my personal preference, so maybe an issue, hopefully not, is on the total column where it had the net property tax amounts, or I believe, yeah, the net property tax amounts, which was row 7. We changed the formula where it used to be you would take line 2 minus line 4, 5, 6 to get to 7. We flipped it out because as I said yesterday, did economics, which is basically applied math geek, which is what I am. So math-wise, it makes more sense to sum the columns up as opposed to subtract them to me. So essentially what you're going to be doing is entering them in reverse to how they were. And one helper is, as you can see in line 4 where it says less or add in line 5, that is actually the sign you're going to use for the number you plug in there. So for less, you will enter the negative amount. For add, you will add a positive amount. Hopefully very straightforward, should bring you to the same result as prior years, just better way for us to display it, and it's easier for us to use. A couple other changes in 105. Very minor changes that probably aren't important to you, some of you, but to some of you, maybe bigger, larger counties, this might be important. We added a couple additional lines for you to add additional funds if they exist. I know there was a couple counties that needed that last year, so we just went ahead and did it for everyone this year. That way, keep the uniformity straight. Makes sense. And in section C, where it was some of the penalties and fines, we added a couple more rows there, not just to make sure the sheet was symmetrical, which being a math person, that is very important to me, but also because we really want you to include as much detail as possible there if you can, not group things together. That way, if there is an issue, we can actually look into what it was and try to find better ways to help you get to the bottom of whatever the error is. And then for this form, it used to be a process where you submitted, we approved, we submitted it back to you, you signed and resubmitted it. We're going to simplify it a little bit more. After you submit it and we approve it, we're going to just send you an e-signature page, which you can just sign and send back to us. Hopefully, cut down on the chains of emails. I've already blown up your mailboxes enough, so you probably don't want to hear from me ever again. So that'll just speed up, and then it's kind of going to act as the same process for you. So I do want to briefly touch on how to complete the 105. I know it might seem pretty straightforward. That was one of the things I tried to add, is how to add columns into, how to properly instruct how to use the columns, but I will go over it a little bit. This might be a little too detailed for you. I actually go through step by step what you need to change, but that is so you have it. Essentially, obviously, you want to enter in that this is the June settlement. Obviously, we need your county name. And then the specific cells. I know we got a couple of questions about some of the forms and saying we can't enter data because the worksheet is locked. That is correct. You cannot do that because it is locked. Where you are supposed to only enter numbers in the text, in the cells that contain blue text or zeros. The rest of it should be a formula connected to either another section or another page that basically will automatically calculate itself, so you don't need to worry about even doing anything with that. So for the 105, where you're going to need to enter things, enter numbers, obviously property tax, each of the columns where the blue text exists. I listed here a couple of spots where you'll need to do that. And then again, at the bottom, my bottom point here is for that section C, we do, again, want you to break up into as much detail as possible. That way, if there is an error, we can find it. And obviously, if you do run into a situation where you need more lines, please feel free to let me know. I can definitely one-off send you a special 105 form that contains as many lines as you ask for. So that was all the major changes in the 105. It pretty much is going to be similar to how it always looks. You might not even notice some of those stuff, but in case you did, that's the differences there. I want to be completely transparent with the forms with you. The next form I want to talk about, and this is specifically important because this is probably the most revamped form of all of them, is the Form 49TC. And when I say revamped, hopefully that is in a good way for you. Might be a little different this first year, but going forward, I promise you will like it more, because as opposed to having 3 workbooks or 3 worksheets in a workbook, it is now in one, with only 13 columns as opposed to, I believe, 27 to 29-ish. So that should be preferable, hopefully. It is for me. So again, another thing that might be a little different on this form, which I think might be of a benefit to you is the section headings obviously had to change because the worksheet 2 was primarily homestead-related issues, and as all of us know, the General Assembly was nice enough to get rid of that for us. So, doing that, we condensed it to just the property tax relief column. I don't have the form with me to show you, but if you ask me a specific question about it, I've memorized it in my head since I've had to revise it about 50 times and resubmit it to you. So I'm open to any questions about that. And I think that's all for that page. So anyway, I forgot to add that. Not that anyone would even have noticed this, but on top of each of the columns in the section heads, such as at the bottom, as you see a little picture of columns 1 through 4, which actually used to be worksheet 1, I stated at the top which office is to complete that section. As you will see as you go through, it also has the auditor's place as well. So hopefully I made this as simple as possible for you to follow. But anyway, kind of what has changed in this is, again, with keeping consistency with the 105, we removed, or I'm sorry. Oh, no. Yeah, I was right. Keeping consistent with the 105, there used to be a 2008 delinquent tax penalties. We combined that with the other current tax penalties to just be in column 1. So essentially, 1 and 2 last year equaled 3. So we got rid of 3 columns, combining them into 1, make it a lot easier. It's current and delinquent tax penalties. Now we've got this column in particular, we've got a couple questions about the BPPE late filing fees. That is to be included in section 1 because it is distributed just like any other property tax penalty. That being said, it needs to flow through the form, so it also needs to be included where the auditor's portion states the late payment penalties. That way it balances. As you know, this sheet needs to balance, else that will be one of the red flags that, hey, we need to go inquire about this. Let's send the form back and say, what's up with it not equaling 0? So, that's the biggest question we've got thus far about the form, other than the small minor, oh, you didn't label the column heads correctly. Thank you for calling that out, but yeah, this was a major issue. So, columns 4, 5, and 6, which contain homestead credits, property tax replacement credits, obviously didn't need those, combined them into the property tax relief. So easy. And then the summing columns 3 and 4, those have always existed on the old form. They're just now in columns 3 and 4 as opposed to 6 and 7. So took about 7 columns from the treasurer's perspective, combined it into 4. As you know, the auditors had a lot more to enter, and we were able to combine that into only 6 columns. So hopefully that is much more preferable for you in terms of data entry. On the auditor's perspective, we have the same issue with the delinquent taxes, as I just said. You're going to want it to all flow through, match up with what the treasurer reported as collected. Hopefully everything that is being collected is being distributed in the same manner, and the same amounts are equal. Again, condensed form, we brought it to the property tax relief as opposed to the broken out homestead and property tax replacement. So you know, as I said, the whole worksheet 2 was homestead credit, property tax replacement, long, 15 so columns. You now only have 1 column for all that. So hopefully, even if you hate me for emailing you all the time, you like me because I helped you out a little bit there. So we'll see. Again, this is what the picture here is, what the form is going to actually look like, the one that's on the FTP site now. Yeah, so, and that is the auditor's portion of the form. Just to continue the form, I know this is more for the treasurer, but I think it's important that you also know what's going on with the form, so I'll go through it a little bit. So the other part also, the other section 2 also checked making sure that what the auditor and the treasurer are reporting are reconciled to zero. That is in the 3 columns in the middle here. Excellent. Okay. I don't know when you printed this. For some reason, I remember it having the error where it said the auditor is to complete those that last section. I'm glad it doesn't, because the treasurer is responsible for that. That was an error on my behalf. It's fixed, luckily. It is fixed in your FTP folder as well. So we can always be thankful for that. And then one thing new to the bottom section, and though this does not apply to you as auditors, there's new to statute this year, the business personal property ordinance fee. There's a separate line item at the bottom of the 49TC, which I don't know how many of you actually look at that since it is the treasurer's responsibility, but it is down there as a separate line item to add in, just so we can keep tabs on what's going on there as well. So again, I've also provided you with a way how to complete the form. I know I believe, what was it, Monday or Tuesday of this week, I actually sent out relatively similar instructions to this of how to go about doing that. So I'm not going to go through it all for you, but essentially you're doing the same thing where you're only entering data in the blue text cells. The rest of it is all calculations that should not need any manual updates. And yeah, you're responsible for, 5 through 9 as an auditor to fill in that data entry. So, spare you time, not going to go through this. But again, they do need to reconcile, hopefully to 0, which would pass our audit to get the approval for this form. Another form, the 17TC. I believe this one is probably for most people usually done in December. I know some people like to get it out early, or some people have refunds they want to go ahead and do now. This form, also a little bit more simplified, got rid of the homestead replacement credit to the relief. So it's now only 2 columns of data entry, I guess from this, you do need to enter the taxpayer, the date paid, and the warrant number on top of the amount refunded and the property tax relief amount. Column 6 will do the calculation for you. One thing that is new about this is it does not include the proof columns anymore. We found them not to be necessary since you're not really trying to figure out the homestead credit or property tax replacement credit any longer. So since it's only down to about 2 total, 3 technically columns that will require your number entry, we didn't think that needed proof to do. But we'll see how it goes this year, and obviously we can make changes later. Again, I went through how to do the 17TC. This is because when you open it in your FTP site, you start off on the summary page. On the summary page, the only thing that needs changed is you enter your county name and I believe the date at the top. They're blue, just like everything else. Everything else will be in black coded. I know I've got a couple questions about why can't I enter this in here? Well, the reason is we need you to actually go to this is the summary page that actually sums up where you're supposed to enter everything. So as you'll notice, I don't have a picture for you, unfortunately. I'm going to try to incorporate more pictures because I feel like just seeing words is boring. It is boring for me. So, but anyway, there's other worksheets that are in parentheses, or not parentheses. I don't remember. It'll say like A1, A2, A3. So what you need to do is change those to the taxing district name, which I believe is unlocked for you to do that. So if you do have issues with that, let me know. Go to each of those individually and then enter the data. And then on the summary page, it will summarize all the data for us. So that is it with the 17 TC. The other form that was changed was a certificate of error. Again, I know this is primarily a December form, but I know a lot of you like to get a jump on it, and some of you do submit it now, but it is primarily December. And this literally is just removing homestead property tax replacement into property tax relief. So nothing, it looks pretty much the exact same as it always has. And then to complete it, I won't even re-say it, I've said it about 100 times, blue text cells. So another form that is more for the county use, though we do ask you to submit it just in case if there is issues with the reconciliation process, and I hope I pronounce this right, the Quietus workbook. If any of you don't know what Quietus means, I encourage you to look up the definition. But nevertheless, the workbook is basically a reconciliation between the additional not used property tax, the additional property tax that is plugged into the page, but not necessarily throughout the rest of the forms. Actually, on the 105, hopefully I've set it up so you can actually copy and paste those two columns in section B to the excise tax and the property tax part, and they should add up. That doesn't work out, I apologize, but I'm pretty certain I checked that to make sure it would work out that way. So then those columns are already pretty much taken care of unless you do have advancements and need to take those out, and there's another column in there. And this is to keep up with the lit changes. So how to go about completing this? It's a great question. It's 5 worksheets. The very first page is a summary worksheet. Again, it's similar to the 17 TC where you don't need to enter anything except if it asks you for the county name and date. I wrote here just to remind you, because I hope this presentation is more of you can take with you to use if you want it. Obviously, if you don't think the information I'm giving you is very good, then you don't have to use it. But like I said just a second ago, the property tax and excise tax tabs are contained on the 105 with the same amount of cells. So hopefully you can just copy and paste them, minimize the user error, as obviously you see that I've done several times in submitting these forms multiple times to you. A lot of the things that were changed in here are also doing with the lit changes. There's potential we got rid of some of so the black text here is stuff we've already hard-coded for you that you don't have to enter, that every county usually has one of them or several of them. It is possible we got rid of some of the automatically named columns or rows. If that is the case, I've actually been nice enough to add a couple more available for use, which is where you can manually enter anything you need. I know on this one it only shows about 4 extra rows, but I believe I've added like 10 or so you should be covered, I would think. If not, let me know again. That was the auditor's portion. This is the treasurer's portion of the cash. This is similar. Again, the removal of the lit. If they need to add more, they have the extra blue tabs. I only gave them 3, so I obviously appreciate the auditors a lot more. So again, the whole point of this workbook is to make sure that you are reconciling with the treasurer's office and you both are at ideally 0, and if you're not at 0, this should at least be an initial starting point to figure out why you're not at 0, and then we can go from there. Some of the other forms, I don't have fancy text or words for you, just to spare you time, but I'll go through a little bit of them. I'm first going to address the excise tax allocation because I know I've got a couple questions about that, about the current one that's in the folder. Yes, I know. That means I will have to probably resend it to you, but if not, it's not a big issue, but it does say December 2016. I will change it to June 2017. However, if you've already started on that, it's not a big deal because it's just a date. It doesn't affect the numbers at all. But just so you have the most accurate version, I will do that for you right after this meeting. Other than that, there was really no changes on that form. I know at some point some of the counties have asked us, well, we don't have enough taxing districts or some question like that. If that is an issue with you, please email the settlements mailbox with your form saying if you could, tell us what you're missing. I will take care of that and resend you a new form that does include those taxing districts. That way it's just easier for both of us. That way I don't have to keep sending you all these revisions all the time. But I don't think that's an issue for every county, just a couple of them. So the excise tax reconciliation worksheet, I don't think changed at all. And I'm pretty confident in that. So along with the fees and the fines and fees worksheet, that also should be up. All these are on the FTP site for you to download. Neither of those two have changed. And then the Form 102, which is basically your tax district level version of the 105, that only changed in the same manner that the 105 changed. So all you're going to see is the absence of the homestead credit column and the 2008 prior delinquent tax row is no longer there. And then on this one, the column C is not included. That said, here's a recap of what we just talked about for all of you that want to do that. Just want to make sure that I did go through each of the forms with you. If you do have any questions about any of the forms or need direction, I know I've got a couple questions waiting on me when I get back about some of these forms. Here is the contact information. I did include my personal email, but if you send it to the settlements, more than just me looks at it. So there's a greater chance of you getting a response if you send it to settlements as opposed to just me, because I'm getting a whole bunch. So, and one person, we have 4 or 5 people checking settlements as opposed to me checking mine. So, and I get all the ones in settlement, so it doesn't matter. But with that said, does anyone have any questions or anything? No? Okay, good. Hopefully that's taken care of then. So I am done.